Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another Lekutey Maharan shir. Baruch Hashem. This is our 40th Lekutey Maharan shir. Can you believe that, guys? We're up to 40 shirim. That's pretty unbelievable. All text-based classes of what Rebbe Nachman actually says. I'm Shaya Sussman, and for more classes, you can find more video classes on Breslov.org, or you could go to my SoundCloud that has more classes than aren't even on Breslov.org from the beginning. Nekudas Tovos, all different sorts of lessons. My SoundCloud at Nach Daily, or you could go to Shaya Sussman. Tonight, more specifically, we're going to be learning lesson 156 in the Lekutey Maharan. We're going to learn the whole piece tonight. It's a smaller piece. And then after we learn this, the following weeks, we're going to jump back into more and in-depth lessons. But I very much wanted to do this piece with everyone. It's about Hisbodedus is the main theme, but really part of the main theme as well is about having a pure heart, that we need to serve Hashem with sincerity, with honesty. And tonight, not only are we going to learn lesson 156, but we're going to learn a little bit from the Kitzur Lekutey Maharan, which is all the excerpts, like kind of condensed, that Rebbe Nachman wrote, the practical advice that comes out of every lesson. And it's much clearer and straight to the point. And we're going to have a Parsha connection, general Sefer Shemos connection in the end. And I wanted to, as well as introduce this piece, why I wanted to learn this piece, because firstly, I feel that, as many feel, that the world is filled with a sort of inner rage. There's turmoil in the world, and people don't have the ability to express themselves in the way that they would like, and the events that are happening in life are enraging, and many people are scared, and many people are shaken up. And obviously, the universal Eitzah is faith, is emunah, and talking to Hashem with sincerity and with honesty and with clarity of speech, that we should purify our hearts to see past the illusion of life and see Hashem behind everything. The second reason why I want to learn this, because as I mentioned before, we're entering the Parshas of Mitzrayim. We're now in Parshas Vayera. And in these Parshas Sefer Shemos in general, until we get revealed, it's all about what the Arizal calls the Galus Hadibur, the exiled speech, or the inability for one to express themselves properly. And this piece, Hisbodedus in general, has a lot to do with Galus Hadibur, as we'll come back to in the end, right? We got redeemed. And Pesach, hold on, we have someone joining us. One moment. And as we're saying before, Pesach is really the Galus Hadibur, the inability for one to express themselves. And Pesach means the Pesach, the mouth begins to speak. So we're going to see how all these parshas really have a connection in general to the inyan of Hisbodedus, to the topic of talking to Hashem. So we're going to learn this piece tonight again, and I feel that it should be a chizuk to everyone, not only just in concept, the idea of Hisbodedus and Muna, but as always, in practice, to practice Hisbodedus, to not just take my advice for it, but to actually put it into Lamaisa, to actually open our mouths and start talking to Hashem in our own words. Without any further ado, I'm going to jump into the screen shares. Okay. So again, this is Lekutey Maharan, lesson Kuf Nun Vav, which is 156. Okay. Everyone can see that over here. Leiv Tahor Barali Elokim. Hashem creates a pasuk in Tehilim. Hashem created me with a pure heart. Hashem created a pure heart in me, a sincere and honest heart. Okay. Kimash medabrim beino lebein kono hu bechinas ruach hakodesh. This that a person speaks between himself and between the Creator, personal prayer, that's an aspect of ruach hakodesh, right? It's not just words that you say. It's ruach hakodesh. It is infused with the divine spirit. The David HaMelech alav hashalom, and David HaMelech shahaya ma'alaso gedola ma'od, who was very elevated, Yisad Mizeh Sefer Tehilim, and he created Sefer Tehilim with this, right? We know that all of Sefer Tehilim is conversations David had between himself and the Creator. And that's why Sefer Tehilim is in Sefer Ksuvim, because Ksuvim is the Svarim of Ruach HaKodesh. I'm just going to say that real quickly, that the difference between Nevi'im and Ksuvim is that the classical difference is that all the Svarim and Sefer Nevi'im, they're written with prophetic insight, their Nevuah, their prophecy, and the books in Sefer Tehilim are all written in Ruach HaKodesh. So David HaMelech himself was a Navi. He's on the lists of that Chazal bring as someone that was a Navi, but yet his Sefer Tehilim is in the canonized in the category of Ksuvim, which are the books of Ruach HaKodesh. So you see that Sefer Tehilim, words that a person speaks between himself and the Creator, that's like Ruach HaKodesh, just like David HaMelech, words between himself and the Creator, his personal prayer, his Hisbodedus, was considered Ruach HaKodesh. Okay, back into the screen share. And every person certainly has an aspect of this. Hu bechinas Ruach HaKodesh is an aspect of Ruach HaKodesh. Hold on, someone else is joining. And so too every person, and every individual according to his own aspect, hu bechinas Ruach HaKodesh, has this divine inspiration. Kamosha Kasav, like it says, Lecha Amar Libi, like it says in Tehilim, Lecha Amar Libi, to you my heart said. Kamosha Perush Rashi, Lecha B'shvilcha, to you Hashem, for you, B'shlichusecha, with your shlichus, with your stamp of approval, with your emissaries, with your messenger, Amar Li Libi, meaning to say, my heart was yours, Hashem, and my heart told me, means that's a Ruach HaKodesh. Shekol hadvarim sha'alev omer heim divrei Hashem yisbarach mamish, because all the stirrings of the heart and the words that come from your heart, those are the words of God. V'hu bechinas Ruach HaKodesh, and this is Ruach HaKodesh. V'tzarich lechadesh tamid levakish b'chol pam b'tachnunim divrei ritzuyim chadashim, and a person every time needs to come up with new ways to articulate themselves and appease God. In order to merit to this, tzarich taras halev. In order to be able to come up with new times with a chiddush to articulate yourself to God, you need a pure heart. V'taharas halev hu al yidei shemislahav ubor libo le'Hashem yisbarach. And how do you get a pure heart? You get a pure heart is when your heart burns for God. Al yidei zeh nistaher lev. And through your heart burning through God, then you get a pure heart. He's gonna explain why you get a pure heart when your heart burns with fire for Hashem. Because corresponding to the passion, the negative passion a person had for doing an avera or for a certain desire, chas v'shalom, shemizet nitma libo, that desire, that fiery passion that you had, that you put into it, that caused you to do an avera, your heart becomes impure. And corresponding to this, you need to have your heart burn with passion and fire for God. And through this, a person's heart becomes pure. Kamosha Kasav, like it says, Kol davar asher yavo be'esh taviru be'esh. Right? Anything that got treif with fire, anything that became not kosher with fire, in order to kosher it, you need to move it through fire. Hold on, I'm just admitting some people here that somehow got logged out. Okay, hold on. Okay. So we're going to come back and explain all this. Ukayesh lo taharas halev. And when a person has taharas halev, a pure heart, then if your heart is pure, if your heart is sincere, then you're always able constantly to be able to speak new words. Shehu bechinas Ruach HaKodesh, which is an aspect of Ruach HaKodesh. V'zehu, and this is what it says, Leiv tahar barali Elokim, that a pure heart Hashem created with me. Azai, then the end of the pasuk, V'ruach nachon chadesh bekirbi. Then a ruach nachon, a proper Spirit, Chadesh, is Machadesh inside of me. Sheyizke lechadesh diburim chadashim, that a person is zoche to articulate new words to God, shehem beruach, shehem bechinas ruach hakodesh. Hold on. Okay, now we'll go for the recap. So Rebbe Nachman is saying that leiv tahar barali elokim, right? That every Jew needs to have that the words that a person speaks to Hashem, when you say, Hashem, help me with this, Hashem, help me with that, Hashem, give you amuna, those conversations that a person has between themselves and the Creator, that's divinely inspired. That's Hashem running through you, giving you words in order to say. Those words are words of Tehilim. Those words are like words of Tehilim, like words that David HaMelech said when he wrote Tehilim, that was Lecha Amar Libi, that was his own heart, that was Hashem speaking to David HaMelech through his own heart, and was really Ruach HaKodesh, his words, because it was like Hashem speaking through that individual. So too, when we have conversations between ourselves and the Creator, when we open up our mouths and start talking to God and articulating in ourselves and coming up with novelty ideas and be mechadesh our words to Hashem Yisparach, that is not just random. It's Hashem speaking through us. Those words are Ruach HaKodesh. Those words are words that have profound meaning and profound influence. I would add on to this that in my daily Hisbodedus, it's like you come up with certain themes. You never know exactly what you're going to say, because your Hisbodedus is conversations between yourself and the Creator. So sometimes I find myself saying like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder why I'm talking about that. And then I'm actually able to take my words that I'm saying and then start building on that and be able to articulate yourself through those words. And when you see those words, not as random as Ruach HaKodesh, that's exactly what you need to express in that moment, that those words you're saying are itself a revelation of Hashem. So then a person's able to really, really, really connect to God, strengthen their emunah, and gain insight into themselves. Additionally, Rebbe Nachman is explaining over here, and we're going to take this a step further, that a person's heart needs to burn for Hashem. It's like, who wants dead mitzvahs? Right? Who wants dead mitzvahs? Like shaking a dry lulav. Like, we're supposed to be passionate and deeply committed and have a deep desire to serve God. And what he says is that these words that we say to Hashem with a pure heart, this fire that we have actually is tshuva. It's matar our libo. Why? He says, because he brings the halacha, the pasuk that the halacha is based on, that we know kabolo kachpolto, we know that the way something was treif, if you had something became unkosher through fire that you're cooking on the stove with fire, and something now became kosher through fire, so the way became unkosher through fire, so the way that you're kosher at it is exactly through fire, right? The way it became impure is the exact way that has to become pure. So too, when our hearts and our minds filled with desire in order to do aveiras and in order to run after all different sorts of things, so the way we come to tshuva, the way where matar our heart, the way that our heart becomes pure, right, is specifically through our heart burning to Hashem. Now, we're going to explain how a person could get their heart burning with passion. That's going to be the next jump. But I want to do this little piece inside over here that's kind of like bracketed from Lekutey Maharan, but it's also part of the Lekutey Maharan. Okay, back to the screen share. It's this little asterisk over here. Right? Ki al yedei chamimus halev, through the fire of the heart, the passion, megarish ruach hatuma, right? The spirit of impurity gets divorced from you. Why? Ki teva ha'esh, the nature of fire, shemegarish avir, right? We know that there are arba yesodos. There's esh, there's fire, there's air, there's water, and there's earth. Hold on, I'm letting someone in over here. Okay, we know that there is We know that there's 4 elements. There's fire, there's air, there's water, and there's earth. So we know that fire needs oxygen, right? If you're making a campfire, it pulls from oxygen. If there's not oxygen, the fire can't burn. So the fire needs to pull from the oxygen and kind of eat it. Okay. The nature of fire is that it divorces air, right? Like also, like if you're a fireman, like like there's no oxygen because the fire eats up the air. Commotion is bar lechachmai hayasodos, like the scientists understand. Kizeu sibus masha yorek knei hasreifa al yidei shemadlikim bo shezurin lamala dahainu apilver. Right, and this is exactly how a bullet works within a gun. That you ki al yidei koach haesh borech ha'avir va'avir hu doches hadvarim shemeliu bahem es knei hasreifa. Right, so you light the gunpowder in the back of the bullet, and then the gunpowder, that fire, sucks out the air, causes an explosion, and it's really from the air which pushes out the bullet. Like we see in many things. And the rule is that fire takes away oxygen. And here's the kicker. Therefore, through the fire of the heart that you're burning to serve God, megarish haruchos, it gets rid of the ruchos, the spirits, shehema aver, which comes from the oxygen. That it divorces the spirit of insanity, the spirit of foolishness, and therefore your heart becomes pure. Okay, let's just explain that as we're trying to do a quick crash course in how the elements work with each other, right? So you have fire, and fire is really considered, all the elements are really, they're all really involved with one another, right? You have to have all of them together, right? Because in air, there's also a little bit of water. There's a little bit of oxygen, right? So really all the elements are working together. We're just kind of making a split over here, right? That's called the Hisbodedus, like fractal mathematics. Every single one incorporates the other one. But over here we have fire. He's talking about the relationship between Aish and Aver, fire, and air, right? So again, like we said, if you're making a campfire, it needs plenty of oxygen, right? If you don't have oxygen, the fire can't get off the ground. Why? Because the fire eats the oxygen, right? So the fire takes the oxygen, and it's what Rebbe Nachman is saying is misgarish it. It kind of eats it up and divorces it. That's why if you're a firefighter, right, you know that or if everyone's stuck in a fire, you have to go down to the floor because you need it's only a matter of time till all the oxygen gets eaten up because the fire absorbs the oxygen, right? So too with the gunpowder, he's saying that the gun, you light the bullet in the back, and what happens when you light the bullet? The fire eats the oxygen and propels the bullet outwards, right? So you see fire is something that has the ability to eat up or absolve or divorce, or there's probably a more scientific term for it. I just don't know it, right? So the fire takes that air and it spits out the bullet, right? So too, when our hearts, the kicker, when our hearts burn for Hashem, when our heart's on fire, we're on fire to serve God, the ruach shtus, the insanity, gets divorced from that individual, and it winds up purifying ourselves. So this is something that you could see b'chush, that we all sense that when a person's on fire for their mission in this world, when a person's on fire for serving God, their priorities get reprioritized, right? And the foolishness and the insanity or the lack of prioritization or all the distractions that a person gets distracted by all of a sudden seem to evade that individual. Why? Because when a person's clarified in their goals, when a person's on fire to serve Hashem, so they're able to prioritize themselves just automatically, right? And the waste of time and the batala and the time spent on the cell phone, and you can waste a half hour just watching YouTube just like that, and all that time when you're on fire to serve God. By the way, I'm guilty as charged. We are on fire to serve God. So what happens is it divorces the ruach shtus, the nonsense or the frivolity, right, within it, and therefore that's like tshuva, and that all comes through a person speaking their words. Okay, back in to the screen share. Now we're going to, before we do the screen share, hold on one second. Whoop, hold on, my thing just got all messed up over here. Let's see. Okay. Now, before we go, hold on. Okay. Before we go into the screen share, just to set the stage, what Rebbe Nachman is going to now say, he's going to say something awesome. If this wasn't awesome, he's going to say something awesome. What's he going to say? He's going to say that in order to make fire, you have to have friction. You rub two things together, and that creates heat. Okay? So what he's going to say is that you'll see where there's friction, there's going to be heat, and that's going to set a person's heart on fire. And therefore, a person, it's amazing how much we've spoken about the power of thought and how Rebbe Nachman speaks about the power of thought. When a person starts jogging their mind and a person has a certain penetration of their mind and a certain way that a fluidity, right? We talk about fixed mindset and fluid mindsets. When a person has a fluid mindset, that's able to bring a passion and a fire within a person. This is going to be great. And we're jumping into the screen share. Back inside. V'lavo lehislavos, and in order to come to fire, v'chamimus laHashem yisbarach, and passion for God, who ayidei tnua is through movement. Ki tnua me'orer chamimut, because movement arouses fire, heat. K'moshe anu roem b'chosh, like we all sense. Im yizrok chetz v'yischo peroshava, if you shoot an arrow and on the tip of that arrow it has wax, that through the heat and the friction that wax on the tip of the arrow will have, that will melt the wax. So too when a person paces back and forth, so what happens is that causes individual to sweat, right? The individual sweating precisely because there's movement that creates heat and passion. The ikar hatnua hu me'hamachshava, and the main faculty, the main movement that one can experience is in their mind. Ki metchila hamachshava noiche ushketa, because in the beginning a person's mind is fixed; it's not moving. And afterwards, the thoughts in a person start to become more fluid and move from thought to thought. When a person's initially sitting in their place, their mind is sitting. But and afterwards, but when a person starts to walk and pace around the room, then their thoughts start going from one place to another. And through this, morid chamimut, this brings heat. Al kain kisha adam yashan, right? So physical walking, physical exertion, that causes a person's mind in order to move. Right? Parenthetically, that's why they say like exercise is good for depression, because the person's moving and now their mind's moving. The al kain kisha adam yashan, and therefore when a person's sleeping, sarich lichsos atzmo, you need to cover your body. Because your body's resting, your mind is resting. Ein lo chamimus, your body now gets cold. And so too with spirituality. When a person's mind is thinking of the greatness of God and in words of holy Torah, and they start jogging their mind, going from thought to thought, through movement, right? Through movement, their mind starts moving because they're thinking about the greatness of God. Hashem did this good for me. Hashem did that good. They're almost like psyching themselves up in a way, or deeply contemplating the wonders of Hashem. Then their heart gets sensed with a field of awe, and they start to serve Hashem. I feel like I say this all the time, but this is great, right? So let's just do the recap, right? He's saying that when you have movement, that creates heat, right? So a person is when a person is physically, hold on one second. Oh, hold on, we're admitting another person over here, right? So he's saying like this. So when a person is physically moving about, that physical movement about brings, it's like you see someone pacing, like they're walking back, and you see that in yeshivas and like davening, people are pacing and pacing and pacing. They're deeply caught in thought. That type of pacing causes a tnuas haseichel, causes a movement of the mind. And when your mind starts to move, right, then all of a sudden you start feeling heat, right? So he's saying this is something we physically see, that when a person's not moving and they go to bed, all of a sudden their body becomes cold, which is why you need a blanket when you sleep, right? So this is like, and he says, even more so when you think about words of Hashem, when you think about the greatness of God, that creates a burning desire and a passion within that individual's heart. So I just want to speak this out a little bit about the movement of the mind and how that all puts together with the burning of the heart and everything like that. So this is amazing. We know that there's two different types of mindsets that a person has, right? We know that there's a fixed mindset. This is the way it is. This is how it's going to be. It's nothing. It was like this yesterday. It's going to be like this today. And we know that there's a fluid mindset, right? We know that a fluid mindset is, okay, this didn't work out. I'm going to try this. I'm going to try that. I'm going to work quick on my toes. And he's saying when a person has a fixed mindset, so then there's no passion, right? It's like sometimes you can meet someone who's very young, like they're like 13 years old, they're just getting bar mitzvahed, but gavalt, they're like an old man, you know, they have a fixed mindset and they're totally dried up, right? But you could also have someone who's very old, but they're very fluid in their thinking and they're on fire and they're serving God and they have this fluid mindset, and that allows them to be adaptable. That allows them to come close to Hashem, right? Another point on this is that as well. I would ask everyone, like, how many thoughts do you think the average person has a day? The average person has 60 to 100,000 different thoughts a day. I have some clients, they say, well, Shaya, I have 200,000 thoughts a day, right? But the average person has 60 to 100,000 thoughts a day. So there's a certain tnuas haseichel that you need to be in line with. It's like people need to unpark themselves on their thinking in order to get new thought and have a new quality of life, a new experience of life. And when they unpark themselves on their old moldy thinking, then they start lifting up and their heart starts burning and they get new perspective. I often share this metaphor with clients. It's like we have 60 to 100,000 different thoughts a day. And what that points towards, that the nature of thought is that the way thought works in its actual principle of form is that it moves. It's kind of like gravity. Like thoughts keep going and going from the day you're born to the day you die. There's always going to be thought running through you. And that's why we have so many thoughts a day. So what happens is like if you would picture cars racing on a highway, like zoom, 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 right? What happens is imagine taking off a car, you catch it, you pull it off an exit, and now you park yourself on it, right? That's a fixed mindset, right? Rebbe Nachman's talking about the opposite of that, right? Not parking yourself on your old thinking. What happens is if you let go of that thought, right, the car goes, speeds right back on the highway, and it starts going along its way. So Rebbe Nachman is saying that tnuas haseichel creates a certain flexibility. It creates a passion within inside of a person, and that passion, from that passion, now a person is able to speak to God. They're able to have leiv tahar barali elokim. Okay, back into the screen share over here. We're going to learn this a little deeper, okay? We're going to go right there. Okay, hold on. V'chein iker chamimus yesod ha'esh, right? And this is the main fire of the principle of fire, the root, the foundation of fire, the element of fire. Humashim makabel metnuas hakochavim. That the fire gets received from the movement of the stars. Ki yesod ha'esh hu l'maala miyesod ha'avir. Because fire in its element is above the element of air, of oxygen. V'tzamach legalgalim, and it's close to the celestial planets. And there's this type of filtration system where every planet receives from the planet above it. Al kain al yedei shematzdik harabim, and therefore through being matzdik harabim, we're going to explain what all this means. Through making people upright, through bringing people closer to Hashem, through making people tzaddikim, through bringing people to serving God, through judging every individual favorably, right? This is also called matzdik harabim, making people upright. Therefore, that breeds fire and passion within people. Like it says, the people that are matzdik harabim, the people that, not sure how to translate exactly matzdik harabim, but the people that bring other people to justice, right, through judging them favorably, or being mekarev them to Hashem, they're like stars. Right, because stars receive from what's above it. And they receive their passion from something above them. And now they could now take their fire, like the flame, right? If you have a little spark of a flame, now you could go ahead and light another flame. Just like stars. That stars, they receive from what's above it, and now they illuminate the things below it. But a person who doesn't receive their fire from something beyond itself, from something above it, even though they might be able to inspire or warm up another individual, that's only momentarily. It's temporary. And eventually that person cools off. Just like we see a iron that becomes white, or like a sword that becomes white, a tempered sword, that gets thrown into water. That the barzel itself, the iron itself, gets cold. And the water that gets hot, it's only for a moment. Okay, again, let's do the recap, right? So he's saying like this, that that every individual needs to receive from something beyond themselves, right? Like the stars, right? Just like the stars receive from Aish, however that works, right? And the Aish, the stars now are mashpia. The stars now give over, and we see them in planet Earth, right? So everything receives from something beyond, and ultimately the whole world receives from God, right? But every part of creation receives from the next level above it, and now it's like passes that on to the next level, to the thing underneath it, right? So too, a person needs to receive from beyond themselves, right? And if you're only generating your own fire from within, eventually you're going to burn out, and that inspiration is only going to last for a short-lived time. And if you want to have constant inspiration, a person needs to receive from something beyond themselves. I want to speak about this point over here. This is a very big deal because this is why a person needs a tzaddik. And we're going to tie all this together with Hisbodedus, but this is why a person needs a tzaddik, right? Because if you yourself are a passionate person, we see this in chinuch, we see this all over, right? That you yourself might be a very passionate person, but if you're not connected to a tzaddik, eventually you're going to be like the water that cools off when you put a burning sword into it, right? So eventually the water's hot, right? But eventually it cools off when you use it in order to cool something off. It's hot momentarily, but eventually it dies down. And when you connect yourself to a tzaddik, you are going beyond yourself. Yiddishkeit doesn't start, stop, and end in your own mind, right? Yiddishkeit now is something greater. It's something beyond yourself. You now have a measure. You have a way to receive from chidushim, inspiration from something beyond yourself. So now that a person is receiving from beyond themselves, they're able to take that light now and pass it on. But if you're not really receiving from a tzaddik, from a true tzaddik, if you're not receiving from a tzaddik, then you're only able to really go so far with your own mind, and you're limited in your thinking. But when you see from a tzaddik, that breaks you out of a fixed mindset and puts you in a fluid mindset, right? So a person might think, oh, I'm so great. Look at all the mitzvahs that I do. And you should think that. But at the same time, the tzaddik shows you, oh, you think you finish Shas? There's an hour Hisbodedus every day. You do Hisbodedus, there's Chatzos. You ever do Chatzos? You finish Shas, but did you finish Kisvei Ari? Did you finish the Zohar? Did you finish Shulchan Aruch? Right? And that movement of the mind, that breaking out of the fixed mindset, right, and to a fluid mindset, creates a burning desire within a person. It creates a burning desire within a person where a person doesn't burn out, where a person is able to constantly rejuvenate themselves and inspire themselves in the words of the tzaddik that is jogging a person's idea, creating a better vision for themselves and seeing what's possible. And this way they can execute that and now burn with proper passion for Hashem. And at the same time, you might think, well, finish Shas, finish this, finish that, right? Even everyone on our level, okay, you put the tefillin on. But do you learn Kitzur Shulchan Aruch after you put the tefillin on every day? Do you say the Tehilim Yomi? Do you do 10 minutes of Hisbodedus every day, right? So everyone on their level, the tzaddik opens up to you and shows you what's possible and allows you to be set on fire. This way you don't burn out. This way, you can inspire people from your cup overflowing, from your inspiration, that it's not generated from you. Just like everything in creation, like the stars need to be received from above. And this is what it says, Matzdikei Arabim kikochavim, right? That the Matzdikei Arabim, they're kochavim, that the people who make other people righteous, they're like stars because they're able to shine their light into something lower, right? And illuminate that individual is able to illuminate someone else. So everyone needs to receive from something beyond them. And it's funny that when you talk about the idea of a tzaddik, people get a little bit uncomfortable. And what I would say is that we've given many shiurim throughout. This is the 40th Lekutey Maharan shir. We've talked about the tzaddik at length. But in every profession, if you want to succeed, you need a mentor to show you, do this, do that. I've been there, I did that, right? You need consulting is a whole industry to be a consultant, right? You need a mentor. And here, Rebbe Nachman is teaching us and reminding us once again how important it is that every person has a tzaddik, that every person has a mentor, someone on a very high level that they could look up to, that Yiddishkeit doesn't have to start, stop, and end in their own mind. This way, they're able to really, really pass on the Eish. And to bring it full circle, this all happens leiv tahor barali elokim, right? This all happens through, that's he's saying that the words a person speaks through Hisbodedus, that is like Ruach HaKodesh. That's like David HaMelech and Tehilim. So what does like the Reisha have to do with the Seifa? What is the beginning of the piece? That leiv tahor barali elokim, that your words of Hisbodedus are like Ruach HaKodesh, have anything to do with the Seifa, this whole idea of being Matzdikei Arabim, and that the Teva of Eish is to, when you have Tnuah, when you have movement, that creates heat, right? What is it? It's because when a person does Hisbodedus, when a person talks to God, right, now they're receiving from beyond themselves. They're receiving Ruach HaKodesh, right? So if you want to constantly re-inspire yourself and connect to a world beyond yourself, that you don't burn out and you have power and koyach in order to make it through life and to have a sincere, pure heart, that happens when you have personal conversations between yourself and the Creator. When you have personal conversations between yourself and the Creator, now you're receiving from beyond yourself. Now you're receiving from a higher world. You're receiving Ruach HaKodesh. A shtickle nevuah. It's not exactly nevuah, it's a lower level nevuah. Your words are divinely inspired. Who doesn't want to have divinely inspired words? Who doesn't want to have a pure heart in order to serve Hashem with honesty, tmimus, pshitas, and sincerity? That happens through Hisbodedus. Leif tahar barali Elokim beruach nachon chadesh bekirbi. Hashem created me with a pure heart, meaning the words that I speak are ruach hakodesh, are words of divine, holy divine words in of themselves. Beruach nachon chadesh bekirbi. Then I'm constantly filled with inspiration. I'm constantly filled with the ability to overcome adversity. I'm constantly filled with the ability to overcome life's difficult challenges, the things that are happening in the world, and face challenges, adversities, Yeridas and Aliyahs, difficult times, exactly head on, because I'm filled with inspiration that's coming from beyond myself. I'm filled with the divine spark, the Ruach HaKodesh, that I receive when I do Hisbodedus, when I do personal prayer. It's infinite depths to personal prayer. Okay, now we're going to do two short pieces in Kitzur Lekutey Maharan. Let me go to that. Some of it we said already, but it's just going to speak it out a little bit further. Okay. Here is Kitzur Lekutey Maharan, the abridged version of Lekutey Maharan. This is in lesson 21 in the Lekutey Maharan. I'm taking just two pieces. Lesson 21 and this lesson are interconnected to one another. I just want to take two pieces over here just to read them because Rebbe Nachman writes this so nicely. And through this passion that we were talking about, a person merits in order to divorce the impure heart, their foolish desires out of their heart. Corresponding, adjacent to the fiery passions that were misplaced, chas v'shalom, shemizeh nitma libo, that your heart became impure from, negedzeh sarich sheyislai v'yivar libo le'Hashem yisparach. Corresponding to this, a person's their heart needs to burn with passion to God. Ki teva eish megarish avir, because the nature, like we were saying, the nature of fire is that it eats oxygen. Commotion is bar b'chush, like we all see, b'kamed varam, and many things. Al kain tzarich chamima shebelev. Therefore, you need the passion of the heart, Kamosha Kasav, like it says, Kol davar sher yavu be'esh tavir be'esh. Anything that became impure through fire needs to be purified through fire. Va'al yedei zeh, and through this, shemispalel v'lomed beheslavus, that a person davens and learns with fire. Al yedei zeh yetahir libo. Through this, a person's heart becomes pure. Meruach shtus, from the meshugananess, the craziness of this world, to yisken, and they merit lelev tahar, to a pure heart. And through this, yiske ledabra beno lebein kono. Then through this, a person's able to speak and have conversations, have a real meaningful relationship between himself and the Creator. Chadash kono b'durim b'chadashim, with words of inspiration. B'chol pam, every time shehem beruch, shehem b'chinas ruach hakodesh mamish, and these words are mamish, divinely inspired. Okay, now Dalit. And through this, and through this, speaking to God and receiving from beyond yourself, you're zoche to a pure heart, like it says, Leiv tahar barali Elokim, like it says, Hashem created me with a pure heart. And then words of inspiration are constantly rejuvenated within me, constantly inspired. This, that a person speaks for himself and the Creator, who bechinas ruach hakodesh, kol echad levchi binasa. Every individual, these words that a person speaks, they're like words of ruach hakodesh, right? Every person on their level. You like that? Every person on their level, because you think my words, ruach hakodesh. What am I saying already? No, but every person on their level. Through a person enters into this and they force themselves, and you prepare yourself to speak before God. Hashem sends you words in your mouth. These words are like Ruach HaKodesh. But David HaMelech alav Hashalom, and David HaMelech said, Yisad mizeh sefer Tehilim. And this is exactly how David wrote Tehilim. And a person needs, in order to inspire themselves constantly, to articulate themselves with tachnunim, supplications, words of appeasement, ritzuyim chadashim, new arguments, that they merit to this through a pure heart. You merit to this through a pure heart. So again, that was just to drive home the point that the words we speak to are Ruach HaKodesh. And through this, a person gets a pure heart. They're able to receive from what's beyond themselves. They're able to constantly be inspired, constantly rejuvenate themselves, constantly have a pure heart, and have a real vibrant connection with Hashem Yisbarach. Not like we started with in the beginning, to end with the Parsha connection. Like we're saying, these weeks are the weeks of Shovavim, the weeks of Shovavim, of Shmos Vayei Rabo B'Shalach, right? Yisro Mishpatim. And in these weeks, they have to do with tefillah. They have to do with tefillah. Like in last week's Parsha, it says, Vayizakam, V'yanach, V'yanunu, right? They were the Jews in Shmos. They're like, they're kvetching, they're making all different sorts of sounds, but yet these sounds are beautiful to Hashem Yisbarach, right? And they cried out. They were there, like we started with the Galus Hadibor, the inability for one to truly articulate themselves in front of God and express themselves in front of God. They couldn't even have words. They were just making sounds, but yet Hashem thought that was beautiful. I want to read this in the Ramban over here. In last week's Parsha, I didn't pull it up on the screen share, but he says a beautiful thing. He says, one. Okay, the pasuk says in Shmos, "Va'ata hine tza'akas b'nei Yisrael ba'elai v'gamre isias halachas asher Mitzrayim lechotzim osam." So Hashem says, this is right before Hashem redeems them and sends Moshe. Hashem says, and now I heard their calling, the tza'akas, the of Bnei Yisrael, and I came to them and I saw their stress and their pressure, that the Mitzrim were causing them lachatz, causing them stress. The Ramban writes on that pasuk, it's pasuk Tes, Perek Gimel, chapter 3, verse 9. Hine tza'akas Bnei Yisrael ba'elai, the call of the Jewish people. It's not a tefillah, they weren't even articulating themselves, it's just the scream, right? Came to me. The Ramban says, it says, and I heard their scream. So now doesn't say that I heard their scream, but the pasuk says their scream came ba'elai, in front of me. That Hashem says, what does it mean their screaming came in front of me? It came in front of my kisei hakavod, my throne of glory. V'lo osif od la'avod paro. And because of that, I'm going to make them no longer, they're going to serve paro. Ki mitzrim lochatzim osam yoser midai. Because the mitzrim are punishing them more than necessary. Ki inyan ad l'shamayim hegia, like it says, right? Like it says, their screams went to Shemayim. The al derech emes and in Nister and Pnimius, tza'akas b'nei Yisrael hi knesses Yisrael. The calling of b'nei Yisrael itself is the knesses Yisrael. Sheba'a elai tza'akas kederech, that came in front of me, kederech k'tza'akasa haba elai v'sham ramazti v'tam. Right? So it says, so essentially what the Ramban is saying over here is that the whole reason why he redeemed the Jewish people, because their scream came in front of me. And Hashem saw their scream. Hashem saw they weren't even articulating. It was a galus hadibor. They weren't able to have proper words of tefillah to articulate them in sounds and cut the air to make decisive letters. It was just, It was just the scream. It was just the tza'aka. And then Hashem decided to redeem them. And this is the galus hadibur that we started with, that the Arizal speaks about, that they weren't unable to express themselves, that speech was in exile. Now we say that Moshe said, Lo ish devar manochi. Moshe said, I'm not a man of many words. It's hard for me to articulate ourselves. It's hard for me to articulate my relationship with God, right? Because the dibur wasn't galus. And then next week, what do we see? We see that Paro has a hard heart. Hashem hardens Paro's heart, right? It means he didn't have the soft heart. This is the soft heart that Rebbe Nachman is talking about. Leiftar barali elokim, right? We want a pure, soft, and sincere heart in honor to serve Hashem. And Paro, who didn't recognize that there's a world beyond himself in order to receive from the divinity that lies within, What did Paro do? He had a hard heart. He had no tnuas haseichel. He had a completely fixed mindset and said, no, I will not let my people go. He was not flexible mindset because he wasn't receiving from the power of Hashem beyond himself. He didn't have a fluid mindset. He wasn't able to go beyond himself, and therefore he was stuck in his ways, despite the fact that this week we see that there are 7 makas that come down and the mitzvah are being inflicted on and on and on. Paro did not have the tnuas haseichel, and therefore he didn't have the purity of heart in order to let the people go, and he was just stubborn in his own ways. But what happens in the end? That we get redeemed from the galus, the paro, the pera, the evil speech goes down. And what do we go through when we get redeemed? We go through picheres, we go through the free mouth. The mouth begins to speak and the peh begins to sach, all happening through personal prayer, all happening through Hisbodedus, all happening through the words that we speak, that David HaMelech speaks of Leiv Tahar Barali Elokim, that the words we speak when we talk to Hashem in our own words, and every individual should do this, not just listen to it as something inspirational, but they should take time every single day, Chok V'lo Yavor, and speak to God outside standardized tefillah and cultivate that relationship with Hashem for even 5 minutes, even 2 minutes. Just take time every day, and that brings the Galus Hadibur. That brings the clarity of mind. That brings to be able to receive beyond yourself. That brings a person to constant inspiration when they can constantly rejuvenate, but not from within themselves, from beyond themselves. Not to be stuck in a fixed mindset like Paro, stubborn no matter what. This is what I think. This is what it was. This was yesterday. This is what's going to be today. That we should all go out of the Galus Dibur through personal prayer and just have a sincere, pure heart in order to serve Hashem. And with that, everyone, I wish everyone Shabbos and Shabbat Shalom.
Shkoyach, Shabbat Shalom. Thank you, Rabbi.
Shkoyach, everyone. Shkoyach.
Thank you.
Shaya, Shkoyach, Shaya.
Shkoyach.